All right, greetings Arizona High School sports fans. Welcome to another video Q&A with AIA Executive Director David Hines. This is the third video in our Q&A series. The first two can be found on the Easy Preps 365 YouTube channel. And those cover other topics as if we have gone through this process of bringing high school sports back to the state. So thank you, David, for taking time again to be part of this.
Thank you, Seth. Appreciate it.
Hey, and so today we're going to start off with some in-depth clarifications to information that has come out in the past week. As we move closer to the start of fall practice, we do have some items for parents and fans and other items and information that's school specific. So the first question is, so the AIA announced that since the governor did not change the in-person date and instead provided benchmarks for schools and districts regarding reopening, fall practice is still on pace to start August 17th. Why was the decision made to stay on the current path?
Well, I think everybody needs to understand that we have been very consistent from last March in the request to return to athletics, whether it was last spring or as we move forward. We've kept a consistent idea out there, and the idea was when the governor allows in-person instruction at the school, that is the date that we have used as the start of when we could return to athletic competition. Obviously, we are still monitoring, we are surveying, we are having discussions with multiple groups to be able to get additional information, finding out what's going on across the state, what consistently is going to be taking place around the state. So we have a date in place. That does not mean that will be the official start date. That is just the date that we have used as a target, so our schools have an idea when we could potentially come back. Again, we are getting a lot of information from our sports medicine people. We are getting information from our county health departments. And as the governor talked, that the county health departments are going to be a big part of some of this, of the metrics that they have moving forward.
All right. Now, a survey went out to the member school superintendents, principals, and athletic directors earlier this week. What questions were included in the survey, and why was it not one for the parents and student athletes to take part in?
This is a survey that we needed to get information from our member schools. So some critical infrastructure time dates and logistically dates that we needed to move forward. So things like, when do you anticipate returning to in-person instruction at your school? What sports will you be participating in this fall if we're able to return? Will you travel outside of your county if we return to activity? And another one was, if needed, would you be in favor of a phased return to sports? Meaning we have some sports like golf and cross country and swimming that are low risk, that we potentially could start with those sports, move to a sports like volleyball and badminton, and then phase in football in a progression.
All right. And with these pointed questions with the survey, it was also much easier just for one survey to come back per school, and also not to send it out to the coaches, each individual coaches, because A, this is information that the school administration would have, and B, one survey back per school would be a little easier than hundreds of surveys back from across the state.
Exactly. And so we've already had over 2/3 of our membership return surveys. We still have until tomorrow at the end of their workday to complete that survey. So we have reminded schools to try to get that information so we can have the most information possible.
All right. Now, you've already said that students who are enrolled in a member school and taking school or district approved online programs are eligible for competition. District programs are easily identified, but what types of programs do private and some charter schools need to provide so their students also remain eligible?
Again, if kids are registered at their school, and by our bylaws, if the school allows a virtual type program, that their school board has approved at the beginning of every year, then whatever instruction that they will provide to their students would be acceptable for eligibility. Most of our districts have their virtual with their classroom teachers going on. Some of them have a separate virtual type academy. And so there are some particulars that they have to pay attention with that, mainly kids that are outside their district boundaries. And as long as they meet that criteria, then those kids would be eligible.
All right. So does this, getting back to the August 17th target start date that we've been talking about, does the school have to start on the first permissive day of practice? And if not, what might that look like?
Yeah, whatever date ends up being kind of the start for that. If a school chooses that they would like to participate in some fall activities, but they're going to they prefer to wait another week or two or 3 weeks, we will work to accommodate that school and maybe an area of schools or a group of schools that are in that same boat to be able to help schedule games. So that they can get some competition. There are a minimum number of games that would need to be played to qualify for state tournament play. But we are also talking about the idea if you do not qualify for the playoffs, that in the first week or two of the playoffs, if you would like to play a couple additional games, we would work to allow that to take place.
And obviously, once all the committees are done, kind of rescheduling at a certain point, and we'll get into that in a little bit, the qualification process will be posted on our site or available at the schools for the parents and student athletes to ask their coaches and AD.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, could you explain the 50% rule for transfers and how it will be applied to sports if there's not going to be a full season?
No, our rule is very clear. It states that you would miss 50% of the scheduled contests that are power rated. So, for example, in a sport of football, if we played 8 games, they would sit 4 games. In a volleyball, if we were able to play 14 games, they would sit 7 games. So it's 1/2 of the number of contests that school actually will participate in during their regular season.
Okay. Now, what about if a student goes out of state to compete in the fall, but comes back later in the year or next year?
Okay, so if they do, that is a transfer. We do have a rule that you only can play that particular sport once in a school calendar year. We also have kids that have transferred, and we use that rule because we do play some fall golf, and we have some other schools that play spring golf. That individual can only play 1 season of golf. If a student transfers out of state, it would be a transfer, and when they return, if they played this year, the transfer rule then would apply.
Okay. Please share some of the information you've received from state agencies like the Governor's Office, Office of Public Instruction, and Health Department during this process.
Well, we've talked about some of our return to activity guidelines, the modifications that we are putting in place for each individual sport that we are going to share within the next week with our schools. We have vetted that out through the Governor's Office, through the County Health Department, through the School Administrators Association, through the School Board Administrators Association. And a lot of our sports medicine advisory group and our executive board to be able to allow schools, when they do return, that they have some protocols that they can put into place. We've had very positive feedback from all those groups on the procedures that we have looked at when we're able to return to play. Again, we are monitoring this situation every day, every hour, and we have dates so that people can at least have some targets to look at. Those dates can and probably will change. And so we need to be prepared to that. And as we said before, with our coaches, our kids, our parents, administrators, we found we have to be flexible. We have to monitor the situation. We need to adjust whenever we can and when we should, and that's what we'll do. However, in the end, the idea is to try to, again, allow these kids the opportunity to participate in athletics to some degree this year.
All right, good. And lastly, and we kind of touched on a couple questions ago, how quickly will schedules be adjusted across all the sports in the fall, and when can we expect them to be made public?
Well, Seth, that's a moving target, just like everything that we're dealing with. Obviously, if we get final decisions on when we actually can start and we know how many games we potentially could play, our conferences will then be working on schedules, any adjustments that we need to, how they modify those schedules, and getting those out to the schools just as quick as they can make those happen. It's not an easy task. It's very difficult. Our conferences have worked really hard to create the schedules that we had in place originally. Obviously, those are going to have to be modified. And when we have the decision final that we actually start, we're going to have those things put into place really quickly.
Yeah, and that's all we have for now. So I'd like to thank David Hines again for being with us to share his insights with everyone out there. AIA just wants to remind everyone that in this process of bringing sports back as safe as possible, please do what you can to stop the spread of COVID-19 by wearing a mask, washing your hands, and social distance when possible, even when working out and training, if you can. Remember to get all this information regarding the return to competition at azpreps365.com or at our azpreps365.com pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Seth.